Okay, I go by the name of Stonewall Jackson. Obviously, it's not my real name. I live here in North Sligo and I've lived here all my life. As I said the last night, I grew up in a Fine Gael house and I stood for Fine Gael in a local election. And I didn't see the campaign out because of their Fine Gael's anti Irish, anti Catholic, anti family stance. They asked me to sign a document that I wouldn't go on radio to speak my mind on abortion, homosexual marriage, transgenderism, or mass migration. Because when I was growing up, Fine Gael was a party that stood by the natural family, stood by an Irish Ireland, and it had marriage at front and centre of its ethos, its Christian Democrat ethos. But modern day Fine Gael are just absolute traitors. We're being led by a complete sodomite. We have a lesbian, a dyke, as our minister for children. She absolutely has no idea what it is to rear a child. She has no idea what it is to sit up with a child at night time that's sick, or change a nappy, or cuddle a child that's after falling and hurt itself, listen to a child's problems, put the child up on your knee and talk to your son or to your daughter about what kind of day they had. That woman has absolutely no idea what that is about because she never had a child. And anybody that doesn't have their own child will never understand the pain, the love, and all the mixed emotions at the one time you will have for your child. And the family is the most important thing to every one of us. And if we lose family, we lose our country, because for generations the Irish family has stood by each other. It went from generation to generation, and we knew who our parents were, our grandparents were, and who our aunts and our uncles were, and we knew we had a sense of loyalty, we had a sense of place, a sense of community. With this modern day Fine Gael, indeed, be backed up by Sinn Féin and Fianna Fáil and Labour and people before profit, they don't want the nuclear family anymore. They want the state to take control of the family. They want the state in control of everything that families do. The white Irish male is not wanted. He's surplus now to requirements. The government, the current regime in Dublin, would prefer if Irish young lassies would lay down with the Africans or the immigrants to have families with. And I see here in my local town of Sligo, on any given day when you go through it, you will see the best of Irish lassies with these Africans and Asians hanging out of them. And it's an absolute disgrace. And parents should have words with their offspring and tell them that this is not acceptable. It is not acceptable to us, and it's not acceptable to those who have gone before us, marked with the sign of faith, that they kept this country for us, the preserved Irish Christian people for generations. In the face of dungeon, fire, and sword, they kept the Christian values and the Christian family alive. Now, we, in our affluent time, have nothing better to do than hand it over. We've handed it over to the LGBT crowd and to the abortionists. The abortion mills have not yet got in full grinding gear here in Ireland yet, but it's only a matter of time before they're on every corner of every major town in Ireland, these abortion mills, where the death of the Irish family will take place. This black mass of Satanists and these cursed people who see nothing at the end of the day, only pounds, shillings, and pence, and pay homage to the great corporations of the world, the Googles, the Facebooks, the YouTubes, and all the Nestle's and all these huge companies whose only objective is to gain and to pull in as much wealth as they can physically pull in. And once they have achieved that, it's about the control of the people. The people are being drummed down now by mass corporations. The corporation, if you have seen, Niall, there in the last couple of days, actually in the last week, is where Google interfered with the search engine as regards the last referendum in Ireland, the abortion referendum, and they hid in the search engine the results for what an abortion is and how a termination works. Well, let me disabuse anybody out there that thinks that a termination is a medical procedure. There's sets in the hospitals, they usually call them D&C sets. In those sets is contained dilators, and those dilators are probed into the woman's uterus, and they till they find the baby, and then there's clamps, and they're like a large blacksmith's tongs, for want of a better, more, I suppose I should put it more politely, but I am a person, and I'll plainly as they reach in with this crushing implement until they delve in, until they find the child, and then they dismember it piece by piece.
It's disgusting,
and the poor
isn't it?
child, yes, it is satanic.
Satanic.
It's put in a kidney dish, and the child is reassembled to make sure all parts are there. The surgeon then, or the abortionist, takes off their gown and disposes of their disposable gown and gloves, and the woman is patted on the shoulder. Your medical procedure, it's over for life of the child is extinguished. It's gone. And those people that tell us that this is a medical procedure
or
are
it's
lying
health, or it's health. They say it's healthcare.
Healthcare that results in the mutilation and the destruction of a human life. And that excuse for a human being himself, Simon Harris, a man who was elected in Wicklow on a pro-life, a servant of Satan the serpent himself. Simon Harris is a despicable person. He is. He's a slime ball. He's a bottom feeder, and he's only an agent for the abortionists. Because Leo Varadkar and Simon Harris met up with the great abortionist crowds at a dinner in Belfast before the referendum, where they sold their souls to them for pounds, shillings and pence. These people are totally evil. They do not have any care for the Irish person, because Irish people now, would say the average Irish couple, Paddy and Mary, and I no offence to any Paddy or Mary that may be listening to this, have 3 children. And those 3 children, if none of them turns out to be gay or lesbian or transgender, and they're a boy today or a girl tomorrow, if those 3 children turn out to be normal, healthy, heterosexual children, if those 3 children went on to get married and have children themselves, the max they will have is 9 between the 3. Okay? So 3 threes is 9, and if those 9 have 3, 27 in the 4th generation. Okay, so you have 27 in the 4th generation. Now, Abdul and his wife have 6 children. And by the grace of Allah, none of them will be gay or lesbian or transgender. And those 6 will go on to have 6 each. So in their 3rd generation, there are 36. In our 4th generation, there's only 27. Now, if the election comes up, and Abdul's grandson goes on for the council, Paddy's grandson Paddy Joe council, he has 27 votes. The other crowd is 36. Who do you think is going to be the next councillor in Lifford or Buncrana or Letterkenny? They will do it by stealth. And Irish people are that stupid at the moment in time. They can't see that. They elected a couch potato for Fine Gael to the council in Navan and County Meath. Another one of them down in County Laois. Irish people are now cutting the rods to beat their own backs. They don't see it. On RT News yesterday evening, there was a broadcast from a Nigerian family living down in Athlone, where their son was the full forward of the Roscommon Miners team. And the New Irish was the caption. The New Irish playing an old Gaelic game. This, folks, is population replacement. There's nothing else to call it. It's the removal of the native indigenous Nadini Dukas in the Hearn to sever them from their ancestral homelands. Within these new so-called Irish, they're not Irish. These people can never be Irish, because the Irish are the Gael. They're the descendants of Cuchulainn, who has populated this island for thousands of years, with a culture that reached into the heart of Europe with saints and scholars and produced wonderful manuscripts like the Book of Kells and the Book of Durrow, and art like the Ardagh Chalice and the Armagh Chalice, and great literary figures through the years. And the Irish monks transcribed the Holy Gospels when the barbarian hordes and the Mongol hordes were at the eastern door of Europe. The Irish monks brought them here to Ireland, and they transcribed them books in places like Clonmacnoise and up here the road beside me up in Drumcliff, where the famous Battle of the Books took place, where St. Columkill, who actually has a church up your country, and
Yeah.
at the Battle of the Books it was declared that each copy to the book as each cow was to its calf, and that led to the Battle of the Books and the dismissal of St. Columkill, the island of Iona, in the dim and distant past. And we are very quick to forget these things, but now we are so cool that we have Manchester United tattooed on our arms and Liverpool, and we have Liverpool as our avatar, and we are so brilliant, and we know who's on Love Island, and we know who the latest character in EastEnders is, but we don't know who Cook Cullen's father was. We don't know what Cook Cullen's real name was. We don't know where even our ancestral homeland was, how it was laid out in the Tuatha, or where the mystical land of Chirnanog is. And I seen on television as well, a kids' programme, that they were doing a play on Nile of the Nine Hostages, and Cook Cullen was played by a black African. And Niamh Kinore, which anybody that understands a word of Irish, Niamh Kinore means Niamh of the golden hair, was also played by an African. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let it be clear that this population replacement is real, because we, the native Irish, are being hunted down. You're being hunted down by RTE. You're being hunted down by the Irish Times and the Irish Independent, the Cork Examiner, the Sligo Champion, the Donegal Democrat, the Longford Leader, any of those papers that's owned by the multinational, Dennis O'Brien and people like this. They will crush you like an egg till they squeeze the very yolk out of us. But are we now, the descendants of Cook Cullen, going to stand idly by and allow this crushing to take place? I'm reading a little book at the moment. It's by a girl called Kelly, and she wrote The Downfall of Haig and Sligo Ribbonmen in 1842. It's a wonderful little booklet, and it describes this organisation that was run throughout Ireland in pre-famine and pre-genocide, the 1840s, genocide against the Irish people. The ribbon men were Catholic, stout Catholic men, and I don't mean stout as in they had porter bellies, I mean they were stout-hearted. They were stout-hearted men, stout in heart and hand, who preserved the heritage of the Irish people. These men banded together in militia. When the bailiffs would come to evict a family, the militiamen would follow them at night time, and they would steal back the cattle or the sheep or whatever it was that the landlord's yeomen who wore the red coats had taken from them. And they would do mischief to the landlord. These ribbon men were betrayed by a man called Hagan in Sligo in 1842, and he met his downfall. These men at that time were under the yoke of the British, the redcoats and the constabulary, and every magistrate in not just in Sligo but throughout Ireland. And Ireland was one nation at the time. There was no artificial order drawn by Lloyd George across the 6 counties. We were all the one. But every magistrate in the country at the time was mainly an Anglican. And those Anglicans never came down on the side of the Roman Catholic peasants, as I've seen them, or indeed a Roman Catholic pipe maker or candlestick maker or carpenter or cooper. They always came down on the side of the landlord established clergy, and people were banished for the simplest of things. Now, Irish people would want to wake up, leave the television behind them, leave the Sunday World behind them, because on the front page of the Sunday World on any given day, I haven't ever bought that paper. I'm in my early 50s now, believe it or not, and I can put my hand in my heart and I can swear before Almighty and go to meet my Father in heaven and say, I have reached this age and I have never bought a red top paper in my life, or have I sat down and watched an English football match. I can say that with pride, and not too many people can say that.
Good man, hi, fair
Because
play to you.
if we are going to be Irish, you need to pick up a book that will tell us about the deeds of the Fianna and the Four Masters, and all our ancient history and language and the rich cultural heritage that we possess, that to be sneered and laughed at now by the trendy people who think the migrants are cool and we'll have an Africa Day in Ireland. Imagine that. a continent of Africa with 52 countries in it, and each one of them is shithole, run by shithole people who know no better, that never invented the wheel. When Irish monks were transcribing the Holy Gospels, these people were kicking coconuts around the ground. We as a nation need to reclaim our heritage, because there was guys back in the 40s who some of them were ex-members of the Blue Shirts, and they went on to form it. Now, there's some of the lads in the chat now I know that I have spoken to, and they're more articulate and better to speak than I am. They were called the Architects of the Resurrection. And in one of the documents, there was a Cunningham guy who was from Belferrista. And he wrote a piece in for the Architects of the Resurrection in the mid-1940s, and saying that if Irish people do not repopulate the island of Ireland, another race will do it for us, and Ireland will be no longer Irish, because there is no Irish people left. And I'll repeat that. In the 1940s, a guy called Cunningham, he was a member of the Architects of the Resurrection. It was a nationalist group in Ireland. He said in the 1940s that if the Irish people didn't repopulate this island, another group of people would do it for us, and Ireland would no longer be Irish.
What was the context of that?
They were drawing up an alternative, the third angle, as they do call it, or the third way, not capitalism or not communism, but it's called the third way, a different way of viewing how people work. There would be no usury money, and interest loans would be, if a family got married, they got a small government loan on bonds to build a house, and if you had 2 children, their loan was reduced. If you had 3 children, your loan was reduced further. If you had 4, the loan would be wiped out. Everybody worked and everybody contributed something, and we would have had an Irish Ireland where Gach dinna, God law, via conscious scale, ya imagine go here, and we would be back. Not back in time. I don't want anybody to think that I want Ireland to go backwards, that we'd be going back to the horse and cart, but we would go back to be a rich cultural place of great heritage, and proud of who we were, proud of our country. That's what the Architects of the Resurrection was. And it was a noble idea. But Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil had them ostracised as fascists and Nazis, and they were unworthy of any sort of public hearing, and De Valera had them banned and crushed, because De Valera, after all, called rightly by Justin Barrett, the leader of the National Party, the devil in era. De Valera.
Yeah,
he was a crypto.
What's your opinion on De Valera?
Sorry, now.
What's your opinion on De
Valera? De Valera was a crypto Jew. That's my opinion on De Valera.
Were any evidence of that, or?
Yes, I was reading a book. Put me on the spot now, and I have to come back another night to you with it. He was a British agent, Britain's greatest spy.
Yeah,
it's a great book.
I have the book in front of me here.
Like, the Irish Civil War was completely unnecessary. Great men both died on both sides. Great died. A useless civil war, where the British folded their arms and stood back, laughing at us slaughtering each other, and they walked off. And actually, another interesting thing, if I can move on a little, Niall, I don't want to be hogging your show.
No,
the Minister for Justice now, Charlie Flanagan. His father was a great patriot. Did you know that?
No, I wasn't
Charlie
sure.
Flanagan's father was a great... Charlie Flanagan's father coined the phrase in the Dáil in the 1940s, when De Valera and co wanted to hand the Irish banking system over to the money changers, and you know who they are. They own most of the banks. And they wear little hats, yamokis, those guys. They have curly locks, white garments under their suits. Do you know who I'm referring to?
A certain group of people?
Yes. Now, De Valera was insisting that we hand over our money, our financial control of Ireland, to those people. And Oliver J. Flanagan stood up in the Dáil, the only man in the Dáil, and begged government not to hand over currency or inconsistent. Because I quote him. He says, where there's bees, there's honey, and where the J people are, there's money. And that's on the Doyle record. So
Wow.
Oliver J. Flanagan, father of Charlie Flanagan, he must be turning in his grave to see what kind of a wimp and a cuck his son turned out to be, who bends over with the jar of Vaseline beside him, ready rectally to receive the shortcomings of the European and prostitute himself like the rest of them in the Doyle now to Europe at the behest of the banks to let our country be overrun by peoples that have nothing in common with us. These people in the Doyle don't care. They were fighting with the nurses because the nurses wanted their wages brought back to where they were pre-recession. And yet the government told them there was no money, but yes, at Christmas the government give themselves a raise of €5,000 each. There you go, lads. Thank you very much. Vote our way. And to hell with the nurses.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with a crowd like this, you are dealing with very sinister people. And I want to talk about something that's now, and this may not be popular with some of the people. I want to tell you this, and I want to disabuse others out there that might think that what I'm saying is wrong, but I am factually what I'm going to. The IFA, the ICSA, that's the Irish Cattle and Sheep Farmers Association, and the ICMSA, which is the Irish Creamery Milk Suppliers Association, and indeed Macra and Affirma, the Farmers Association, is full at the top and at local level with political touts who have political ties either to Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil, and in some instances they have them to Sinn Féin. And there's all, no matter when you go to an IFA meeting, there's always the meeting before the meeting where things are discussed and set out. And the ordinary farmer out there, they think the IFA is working for them. No, they're working for big business. The head of the IFA, locally in any county, whether it be Donegal, Sligo, Kerry, Wexford or Westmeath or Meath, they're political. And you know what the reward is for these guys when they move on a little, I think they fade into, when they're on the county committee and they go to the county meetings in the Bluebell Centre in Dublin or down to Portlaoise with the ICSA. Any of them that toes the line and sings the song hymn sheet with a position on the government's agriculture panel. Do I make myself clear?
Yeah.
And then another poisonous organisation, they're like the Teamsters in America, is SIPTU. SIPTU is a corrupt and vile organisation that no longer represents the working people of Ireland. The working people of Ireland, the vast majority of them don't want to know about abortion or transgenderism or homosexual marriage. They want to know, will their rights be protected? Will they protect the 0-hour contracts? Will they make sure that people who start off on a temporary contract, if they're proven, and I'm not saying that everybody gets a temporary contract, doesn't prove themselves. What I'm actually saying is that people that start off on a temporary contract, if they prove themselves well enough to be given a full-time contract, SIPTU's job is to make sure that that person gets that, to make sure that that person is looked after in their. But SIPTU has spent a lot of money and a lot of time promoting homosexual sodomy and catamites and abortion and migrants. So SIPTU no longer represents the interests of. Excuse me, I have to take a drink of Ishka here.
No problem. Take your time. Hit the like button. People subscribe. Yeah. See, the next time you're on, can you find that book that you're talking about, De Valera? That'd be really. Some people in the chat are asking about that.
I'll have to do a little bit of research. Looking at, I work along with doing a bit of farming. I have 3 kids, and it's very difficult to. I don't do as much reading, and I'm half blind as I was able to do, because I haven't sat down to watch television since Christmas, and that was only to watch a movie with my kids, and because I find the television is just vile. I heard.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I heard some lad there in the chat talking about E. Michael Jones. E. Michael Jones has his finger on the pulse of what's going on. The population replacement thing, and about Logos and bringing people back to Christ. You see, in America, you've got people, and this is very relevant to Ireland at the moment with influx, particularly Nigerian pastors into Ireland. You've got these Zionist Christians in America, And there's nothing worse than the Holy Bible in the hands of a Zionist Christian, because they misinterpret the whole book of Revelations, and they use passages from the Old Testament to prove their point, which is complete rubbish. These guys go to the Bob Jones. You ever hear the Bob Jones School, the ministry school in South Carolina?
No.
A famous Irish clergyman there, of course you wouldn't like me call him Irish clergyman, an Ulster clergyman. Mr. Ian Paisley went there in his heyday, and he learned his trade there. Bob Jones would have probably been one of the biggest anti-Catholics ever. And he would have had access to a thing called the Schofield Bible, and the Schofield picked out passages in the Bible, and he put this thing together called the Millenniumism, and that was where I'm saying now that we're in the end times, and the tribulation is close at hand, and that we should all support Israel, and Israel is the true people of the Middle East, and the Zionist Jews have to go back to Israel to fulfill the biblical prophecy. Well, that's a load of bull, because the new Israel is the Christian people. That's the new covenant, not the Zionists. Because once the temple was burned in 70 AD by the Romans, sacked by the Romans, the Levitical priests were all lost their heritage. All the documents was destroyed, and they have no lineage. So the likes of the preachers like John Hagee and Joel Osteen and them, the Cornerstone Church in San Antonio brings in millions of dollars every year, and John Hagee then is talking whore Babylon, referring to the Pope and the Catholic Church, not the current Pope, the Pope over the Church, and so. And the funny thing is, the Zionist Jews that they're worshipping wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire. They've no time for them, only to send in the money. So these people that control everything, they're totally in absolute power, because money now is no good to them. And getting back to Ireland here and about power, all this carbon footprint, where the environment is going. And as I spoke to the last night about the electric cars, the clearance of the countryside is one of their problems. They want to make it so tough on some of the small farmers, small scale, maybe 15 or 20 or maybe 150 sheep on the mountain, on the Blue Stacks, or up on Errigal, or on Binbulben, or down in the Wicklow Mountains. They don't want them at that. They see them as an inconvenience. So what they want to do is make life so difficult for them, they will force them off the land and force their children into towns and villages where they can control them. And as I said to you the last night, they want them consuming. They want them buying. Everything is disposable. Years ago, if your washing machine broke, you got somebody in to fix it and hammer it together and off again, and be like a Kango hammer in the kitchen when your mother would be washing the clothes. She'd nearly have to sit on it to keep the lid on it. But now the washing machine breaks down. You can buy a new one for €400, and you take the one back to the retail industry. You throw it in the back of the Jeep or in the back of the car, and you bring out a new one, and off you everything story. And trades like electricians and plumbers and welders and carpenters and builders, even lads for plastering and things like that, will be a thing of the past, because they will hand over. The construction industry already has done it. And there's an example of something I was talking about earlier on, the rewards for these guys who was in the farm and organisations for towing the government line. Tom Parlin is a great example of that. You've heard of Tom Parlin. He was a PD man, and he was the leader of the IFA one time. Well, he got rewarded by being made CEO of the Construction Federation. And these jobs are always given out to good boys, and like the Moon Show years ago, handing out the lollipops to her favourites, while us bold lads would be at the back with the knees cut of us with Sally rods. And you'd hope for the law of a moth to get the Sally rod down across the palm of the hand if you weren't behaving yourself. And, looking back on it.
Some people are asking about Michael D. Higgins.
Michael D. Higgins is a homosexual. The parades around the Phoenix Park looking for rent boys. It's just like the Emmett Stagg. Remember him, the Labour Party TD? It reminded me of that old ad for the drink, Stag, just right for enjoyment. Do you remember that?
No, I'm not sure now.
It was a it was a drink. It was an alcoholic drink, and the caption on the TV used to be "Stag, just right for enjoyment." So that was Emmett Stagg. He used to be parading around the Phoenix Park too, looking for rent boys. But Michael D. Higgins is reported to be as well to be roaming the Phoenix Park looking for a few young bucks. Pardon the pun. And he is a champagne socialist. He doesn't give it two damns. He thinks he's a literary scholar quoting Yeats and Seamus Heaney and things like that, and yet he thinks Che Guevara and Fidel Castro are good men. He's a pompous anti-Irish little git. He'd sell you out in the morning. He doesn't care. He's up there in the Phoenix Park for another 7 years. He'll probably come out of it wearing a wooden suit. I just don't wish the man any ill will, but there's a great chance of that happening. With his posh accent and his caviar sandwiches and whatever else. I would have no time for Michael D. Higgins. I didn't vote for him. I voted for Peter. But I can't understand the accolades poured on him by the media and people going out to vote for him, and he's a wonderful president. He's a wonderful representation of Ireland. A sad little man with an inferiority complex that thinks that he's an African day and an Asian day in the lawn of the Phoenix Park. He's a disgrace. These people don't care. They think that Ireland is some kind of an open boat that we can have anybody here. And you hear the journalists, so-called journalists, and you don't have to be Irish to be Irish. A Nigerian family that moves here and they move down the road into your neighbour's house, where your neighbour's son had to sell up and move out because he couldn't get any work, and now there's a Nigerian family living there, and they're as more Irish than the people that has 10 generations in the graveyard. They've no understanding. There was a lady here in Sligo, Pamela Iziwehai. She led the Labour Party in Sinn Féin round here like a circus master. She was a bogus asylum. It wound up costing the taxpayer €2 million. Nobody blinked an eye. Like, how much longer are we going to send our to children born abroad out of this country when our own children are homeless? How much social welfare leaves this country to go to these foreigners? Now, I don't begrudge any child a crust of bread, but look after our own. Look after our own children that has to sleep in and guard the station. Look after our own people. Give our own people. The Irish people, it's a disgrace to see all the Irish people falling around with drink and addictions, drugs. The drug cartels are running parts of the city. It's no-go area for the guard. These drugs are being brought in, so the population problem, reaction, solution. They need to take a firm hand on people. People don't see these problems. But when you see a drunk Irishman falling around the place, you go, that could be me for the grace of God. And it could. None of us that's working are more than 2 paychecks away from defaulting our mortgage. Because we're being gouged. Look, open your wages, you'll see the universal social charge, pay-related deduction, PRSI, your tax. It's all fucking because it's all tax. If you're a working person, the PRSI that you pay is no good. If you don't have health insurance when you go to casualty with an injured child or injured yourself, you pay €100. Where's your PRSI now? It's not there. It's of no benefit. You go straight back in. How much did the Gay Pride Parade cost the taxpayer in Dublin? How much did that parade cost the Irish nation? When you see members of the Defence Forces out hoisting up the rainbow flag. When you see the cars decked out in the colours. Who's paying for it? We, the dumb Irish, are paying. We've lost all credibility. We've been drummed down. It's not safe now. You hear 9 and 10-year-old children, if you're having a conversation with an adult, and you say something about somebody that's gay, and they go, "That's not right. 2 gay men can get married." That's what they tell us in school. Parents, waking up. Waking up, teach your children your catechism. And I know people in the chat will be probably saying, "Oh, the Catholic Church raped and abused." Let's be clear about one thing about the Catholic Church. Homosexual priests violated children. 85% of the children that were abused were prepubescent teenage boys, abused by homosexual men. Men in their 20s and 30s abusing boys of 14 and 15. This is homosexual sex. That's what it is. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's not to take away from the poor little girls that was raped and abused. They're equally the victims in this. But to say that it was Catholic pedophilia, Catholic Church, is wrong. These were homosexual men, depraved men, who were brought into the church to break the church from the inside, couldn't break it from the outside. The people waking up. The people waking up that we're either a Christian country, Catholic. Now, I don't have any problem with Protestants. I think there's one thing for sure, that if you walk down by a Church of Ireland church or a Presbyterian church today, or Sunday at service, you would see every car out in service. Every one of them would be taxed, every one of them would be insured, and every one of them would have an NCT cert, and every one of them would have 4 good tax on them. I'm ashamed to say that he went down by a Catholic church, Paddy's car mightn't be taxed or insured once. So the Protestants are very honest, hard-working people, and we should never take that away from them. They're our neighbours.
Yeah,
Irish,
absolutely.
Much Irish as we are.
Yeah.
As much some of our great patriots were actually Protestant people. Henry Joy McCracken, Bartholomew Teeling, Napper Tandy,
Robert Emmett.
Robert Emmett. These were great people. So we shouldn't say anything about our Protestant neighbours, decent, hard-working people. But if you're a Roman Catholic, teach your children the catechism. A Protestant person, you should teach your children religion. We all share the one God. The head hackers and sandhoppers don't share the one God. They'd slit our fucking throats as quick as they'd look at us.
Yes,
and
sir.
The funny thing is that the Trover Radcliffe that Nair's building, and he thinks they're great. He'd like to play hide the sausage with them, but they don't like sausages and they don't like queers. And that's the reality of it. These people that comes in here and they'll get the mats and the prayer mats out. They're praying to a paedophile. Muhammad married a 6-year-old girl, had sexual intercourse with her at 9. These people have no idea. They wash themselves under a camel pissing. That's the truth, Niall. There's videos showing them washing themselves with camel piss. The Somalis and the Malawis would eat you as quick as they'd look at you. Those people never invented the wheel. Eating grubs out of the ground. Like the Mediterranean people were a great people. Where we came from ourselves, the Irish people came from the Iberian Peninsula. Those people, the people in Galatia, are our brothers. The same Celtic people as we are. We need as a European people, we need to stand together. We need to reclaim Europe. We need to reclaim Europe from these hordes and this invasion by stealth. The only one that's doing it that I can see that's protecting Europe is Viktor Orban. And indeed the Poles and the Latvians. Putin in Russia has reopened 2,500 churches in the last number of years. He's brought people back to the Russian Orthodox faith. They're good Christian people too. Because if they weren't, the Armenian genocide wouldn't have occurred. Or the Bolshevik NKVD Jewish Bolsheviks who murdered tens of thousands of people in Russia because they were Russian Catholics or Orthodox Catholics.
Tens of millions?
They just strung them up. Millions. And we're never told about any of this. We're not supposed to know. But you're not supposed to know how much points Manchester United got in the Premiership.
Some people...
It's horrendous.
Some people are asking, how do we fix this problem? Do you have any solutions to these problems we have?
Yes, I do. I do have solutions. And here's a couple of simple solutions to start with. Educate your children. When they come home from school, debrief them. Ask them what's going on. What did they learn in school? If they're not singing out of a nationalist hymn sheet, if your school is not coming up to the mark, re-educate your children. But always to make sure to tell your child that what they say at home stays at home. Loose talk costs lives, and in this case, loose talk costs a nation. If every child that comes home from school is debriefed in the nationalist viewpoint, then we will save our nation because our children will be. What has happened now with the millennials, they've been introduced to this multiculturalism, multicreedalism, because nobody took the reins. Nobody said stop. Nobody said, look at guys, if somebody comes in here from Africa and kicks a ball and puts on a Leitrim Ganzi, they're not a Leitrim footballer. They're a foreigner playing in a Leitrim Ganzi, but they're not. If we don't realise that we're being replaced, then when we've lost all. But if you realise that you can do something about this by educating your children. Like, there was a time when I used to go into Sligo to get the haircut and bring my young lad with me, because I always like to have his company and teach him. We talk about things we're driving in the Jeep. But I stopped that. Do you know why? Because there's a young Irish lassie, a family woman, down the road. She cuts hair. We go there. Boycott them. Put them out of business. Give your money to a fellow Irish person that can do just the job just as well. There was a shop in our local village here, and two Irish girls owned it, and one of them got sick and they decided to sell their business, and two Indians took it over. I haven't stood in the shop since, nor I won't. That's what we should learn the lesson from the people of Mayo down at the time of the land wars in the 1880s, where that word came out of Captain Charles Boycott. Did you ever hear of him, Niall?
No, I haven't.
Captain Charles Boycott was a land agent for a British, I don't know, it was Lord Clanrickard, I'm not sure, but in the 1880s, Boycott was sent to as a land agent to pick up the rent, and there was a dispute in County Mayo, and the local Catholics wouldn't serve him, they wouldn't shoe his horse, they wouldn't cut his flax, or they wouldn't save his hay, or they had to give a percentage of their turf towards the big house. None of them would cooperate with him. So he wound up bringing, I think it was over 5,000 Orangemen from Armagh, Monaghan and Cavan over to bring in the harvest, because they boycotted him. That's where the word comes out of, boycott. He was Captain Charles Boycott. Boycott them. Leave them with nothing. Support ourselves. If you're looking for a helping hand, look to the end of your own arm. Raise yourself up. Straighten your back. Walk with pride. Be an Irishman. Don't be wearing bloody English football shirts. Don't be talking about what's going on in the Premier League. Educate. Educate. Organise. This is what we have to do. Strengthen numbers. And get back to the faith. Faith of our fathers through dungeon, fire and sword. Remember that. The penal laws. Catholics went out to the butts of the ditches and said Mass. Why? Because they had a strong faith. They had a strong faith in Christ, and they had a strong faith in their fatherland, because they knew who they were. But us, we have turned our backs on it, and we have forgotten, and we will pay a heavy price. Now, lad, I have to go. Maybe somewhere half an hour ago, but anyway, listen, it was great talking to you, and I hope I didn't go on too much of a rant.
No, I could let you go on there all night. Everyone in the chat is really enjoying your talks. Will you please come back again? Feel free to call in every show. Like, I will gladly have you on again.
I will, lad. No, but I was off there for a week or so, because I was trying to get bales of hay done and move, get sheep shorn, and I have to go back to work now, so I'm working.
If you need some help sometime, if you need some extra hands, I'm not too far away from you, and I'll gladly come down and give you help.
No bother, bud. Listen, if you're ever up this country, give me a shout on a big long chat. And there's a lot of stuff in this area I could show you. And listen, the very best of luck, lad. And go a míle maith agus slán agus banach te go job.
No, guru míle maith agus slán, lad.
Slán.
Slán.